it's Quana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. I am here today to review one of my most anticipated shows of 2023, and that is HBO Max's The Last of Us, starring Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey. This is an adaptation of a video game that I think came out somewhere around I think we're at 15 years ago or so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a very popular zombie apocalypse shooting game. And although I've never played The Last of Us, I've watched the gameplay because I'm that kind of nerd that if I don't play a game, I will oftentimes watch the gameplay videos. They make really good distractions while you're working and really good ASMR experiences. But I was really excited about this adaptation. One of my favorite shows just ended its primary series, The Walking Dead, and I was really looking for another kind of actiony sci-fi drama to fill that void. And of course, you cannot help but be excited about a show that has Pedro Pascal. And I mean, this guy is just literally like 3 for 3 in three really good franchises now. This makes the third one with Game of Thrones, and then The Mandalorian, and now The Last of Us. And I completely feel confident that he's going to helm this show into success. Now, we don't know yet how much of the show they plan on adapting, whether it's just the first one, whether it's both of them, whether they're planning on doing spin-offs, whether they're going to be diving into some of the years that are not covered in the game and kind of create more lore, more world around the show. But as of right now, I'm really, really excited about what this first episode gave us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what I think this show does right and why you should probably check it out. Now, I'm going to have some spoilers. I'm not going to give away play-by-play, however, in this first episode, because I want as many people as possible to watch and come back for weekly recaps. So come back next week and you will get a play-by-play of what happens. But this episode, not only was it was just a great pilot episode and pretty much did everything you need to do to establish it's very significant and very specific world building that exists within this game, especially because it's not just going to be fans of the game who are going to be watching this show. People who are unfamiliar with the game are going to be watching this show, or at least that's the hope. So first and foremost, I really like the fact that they set up the exposition around the disease that's going to take place and run rampant in this show, and this particular brand of zombieism and what causes it, by having that interview segment at the beginning of the episode. It reminded me, I don't know if it was supposed to specifically be kind of like a Dave Cavett, I think was his name, like this guy. I watch his videos, read clips on his videos on YouTube all the time, and he was an interviewer from the 60s and 70s. And it felt like that kind of show where they had these two scientists on, and they're talking about things that could cause a global extinction scenario for humans, one being a virus that causes a pandemic. Yeah, this show is talking about us. And the second being a fungus, which is what is taking place in the world of The Last of Us. Now, light spoiler for the game, but it deals a lot with spores. They changed that a little bit, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's wise because the use of spores in a television show, it might not film as well, and it might cause the look and appearance of the show to kind of not have as much pop on screen. So I think that probably was a good stylistic decision. But by having them have this discussion right before we get that first title card sequence was really, really smart, because it already establishes causation, which means us as viewers and fans don't have to spend the rest of the series speculating on the cause of the zombies. And I'm looking at you, The Walking Dead, because I think they teased it a lot in The Walking Dead without ever committing to a full reason, because Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead graphic novel series and comics, never gave a reason. He wasn't concerned about the cause of it. That wasn't the world that he wanted to create, because the show teased it so often that they were going to create a cause. It meant that viewers were going to constantly have it in their minds. By this way, going ahead and answering the question up front, it eliminates us speculating, and then they can go ahead and fully flesh out the world without worrying about like loose ends. So I really appreciate that. Really, really appreciate that part. And then we dive straight into the prologue of the game, which sets up the backstory of the main character, Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, where we get to meet his daughter, Sarah, meet his brother, Tommy, understand his life. He's a hardworking man. He's a construction man. He's a builder. And we get to see that he's the single father. We get to understand all of the complexities of his character, which means we're going to be much more attached to him. And that's really important for a character like Joel, because Joel in the game is not always the best person, and he makes some really hard decisions, but establishing him as this caring man, who's this hardworking man who just wants to provide a good life for his child, really endears and makes him a much more relatable character. His daughter is played by Nico Parker, and I literally spent the first 25 minutes of this episode trying to figure out why this little girl's face looked so freaking familiar, and it's because she's the daughter of Thandie Newton. If you know Thandie Newton, she is an actress. She was in Mission Impossible 2, I think. She was in Westworld. She's been in a ton of stuff for Color Girls. And this little girl literally like copy print her face, took her mama's face. And so I was like, really, like, I know this little girl's face. Who does she look like? And alas, that was what it was. But I really love the fact that despite switching the appearance and the race of the character, she still very much felt like Joel's daughter. The camaraderie between them, the playful banter between them, just the closeness that they filmed those scenes, having her lay on his lap when they're watching the movie, that was all so smart to do, to really establish them as this caring, loving relationship between a father and a daughter. I really like the fact that the first 25 minutes, none of the dialogue feels wasted. It feels like all of it is really building towards this character. And they spend a lot more time on Sarah than the game does, at least giving like backstory type stuff. And the scenes aren't long, but they do just enough to establish fear, suspense, because she's gone into the city, and we know this. We understand that she's afraid that the virus is going to come for her, and she never utters it, but we can see that palpably on her face. I love those little moments that they do to establish the character and establish the world building. And then all HE double hockey sticks breaks loose, and the virus is there, and people are dying, and it's a complete madhouse. And the action sequence of them trying to flee and fight off these zombies and to get out of town was chef's kiss. Like, it really just felt like we were in a game almost, but also in the movie. We were in that back seat with Sarah, feeling her fear, feeling Joel's fear. Like, the way that it was shot was like frame for frame the same, and it was such a smart decision. Where most adaptations go wrong is they stray too far from the source material. And that goes for not just game adaptations, that goes for book adaptations. And it's really hard to do any faithful adaptation of an art form that is larger, like a book, like a novel, like a video game, and make that into like a movie. So first of all, just to have The Last of Us be a television show instead of a movie allows all of that source material to breathe and have room to grow and shape and develop. There were some pretty bad adaptations that I saw last year. One of them being Jane Austen's Persuasion strays too far from the source material and doesn't do enough to build the world of the characters. And that is not the problem here with The Last of Us. They do such a good job of sticking really tight to the source material, making just enough subtle changes to where fans of the game can appreciate and look for those subtleties as they're kind of looking for all the Easter eggs, which they're going to be doing. But also then for people who aren't familiar with the show, or familiar with the game anyway, can understand the world that's being developed. And then we get to the 20-year time jump, and Joel is a hardened man. He is a man who has suffered tremendous loss, and the story sets up all of these great questions that need to be answered. Like, where is Tommy? Is Joel going to survive? How did this relationship with Tess develop? When they meet Ellie and then are tasked by the Fireflies to get Ellie out of the quarantine zone. Are they going to be able to manage to get her out of there? What is this big purpose that she's there for? We certainly can guess by the outcome of that testing device that she's going to be super special, but we really don't know what any of that means yet. And the show does a good job of ending with those questions so that we want to watch the next episode. They really did do a good job of building the world, the look of the world. Everything looks very gritty. It looks like what you would expect a quarantine zone, militarized area to look like after 20 years of complete ruin and the collapse of the world as we know it. And I'm really excited to see what the show is going to bring us in the coming weeks to come and how far they're going to take it. I thought that this episode did such a good job. So many good touches in showing us these characters, introducing us to these characters so that we will care about them along the way. I think it's so smart to select Bella Ramsey in this role. She's a phenomenal young actress, and I think she has a big presence, which is important in a show like this because she's going to be standing toe-to-toe against some heavy hitters, and she has to definitely be a presence. We have to constantly have our eyes on Ellie, wondering what she's doing, and she definitely brought all of that energy to this episode. But now I want to know what you guys thought. Did you enjoy the first episode of The Last of Us? And if you haven't watched it yet, I definitely give this 10 out of 10, A+. It was great. Probably my favorite thing, not just about the show, was really that title sequence. The fact that they kept the theme from the game and kept a touch of the look of it, but at the same time developed it a little bit more, fleshed it out to look like a growing fungus. And then you kind of have that callback to Game of Thrones title sequences with like the growing of the city and the fungus growing up around the city, and then it ends on that shot of Joel and Ellie walking, which is like from the Last of Us cover. That was so smart because I felt like, for people who are unfamiliar with the game, that was for Game of Thrones fans. That was for the Game of Thrones fans who are not familiar, and HBO's like, hey, House of Dragons is under hiatus right now. We're waiting on season 2, and we know about season 8. It felt like a promise and a commitment to be faithful and give us a really good show. And I'm going to be keeping my eyes out on you, HBO, to make sure that you stick true to this. So, guys, let me know down below in the comments what you thought of this first episode, and I'll see you in the next video. Toodles!